Oh my God, there are a lot of you. This is the most frightening moment of my life. So, my story is a story of ecological redemption. I was born and raised in Newfoundland, Canada, dropped out of high school when I was 14 and headed out to sea. I fished the Grand Banks, the Georges Banks, tuna, lobster, headed to the Bering Sea in the 80s and fished cod and crab. Now, this was the height of industrialized fishing. We were tearing up entire ecosystems with our trawls, chasing fewer and fewer fish further and further out to sea. And most of the fish I was catching was going to McDonald's for their fish sandwich. And I go to McDonald's all the time because it's this romantic moment for me. So I was a kid producing some of the worst, most destructive food on the planet for some of the lowest quality, unhealthy food on the planet. But God, I love that job. Right? The sense of humility of being in 30-foot seas. Right? The sense of solidarity of being in the belly of a boat with 13 other people, 20-hour shifts, and the sense of meaning of helping feed my country. Those are some of the best days of my life, and I've been on the water for 30 years, and I miss them so much. So then the cod stocks crashed back home in Newfoundland, and this was a real wake-up call. Thousands of fishermen thrown out of work, boats beached, canneries emptied, and it is amazing that a culture and economy built up over 100 years, how it can disappear in a matter of weeks in the face of ecological crisis. And that's when I began to learn that ecological crisis has nothing to do with the environment. It has to do with the economy. Right? There will be no jobs on a dead planet. So I started this search for sustainability, and I ended up in the aquaculture farms in northern Canada, because aquaculture was supposed to be the great answer to overfishing, job creation, and reduction of pressure on fish stocks. Instead, it was more of the same. We were polluting local waters, antibiotics, pesticides. We were growing neither fish nor food. These were Iowa pig farms at sea. So I kept searching, disillusioned, and I ended up in Long Island Sound. I chased a woman down there, and they were opening up shell fishing grounds for the first time in 150 years to attract young fishers back into the industry. And I remade myself as an oysterman. I did that for a couple of years, and then the storms hit. Hurricane Irene, Hurricane Sandy, barreling through, wiping out 90% of my crop. Most of my gear washed out to sea 2 years in a row. Suddenly, I found myself on the front lines of a climate crisis that arrived 100 years earlier than expected. This was supposed to be a slow lobster boil. It's here and now, as everyone in this room knows. So once again, facing ecological collapse, but it means I can't work on the water. The goal in my life, I'm not an environmentalist. I said this a lot. My goal is to work on the sea. My goal is to die on my boat one day. That's going to be a measure of success. But we need to protect and save the oceans for me to die that way. So I picked myself up and started redesigning my farm. I lifted it off bottom so it was resilient to storm surges. Began using the entire water column and searching for new species to grow, species that were restorative. So after 15 years of experimentation with sustainability, I ended up as the first 3D ocean farmer growing a mix of seaweeds and shellfish to grow good local food, create jobs, and help fight the climate crisis. So that's how I got here. Now let's look at the farm, because it's hard to kind of picture what I'm doing under the water. There we go. So I had a kid draw this picture, and it's really simple. It's just hurricane-proof anchors on the edges of the farm, and then a rope 8 feet across the surface. From there, we grow our kelp vertically downwards. Next to that, we've got our scallops in lantern nets, mussels in mussel socks. On the bottom, we have oysters in cages, and then clams down in the mud. Here's a picture of our kelp. It's a beautiful plant. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing for me to grow vegetables. I can't go to the same bars anymore. I got to hang out with arugula farmers. Like, what am I going to tell us? But, you know, this is a time of transition. So, kelp goes in post-hurricane season, one of the fastest growing plants on Earth. Once we harvest the kelp, the mussels set. Those are our mussel socks there. On the left, we have mini scallops that we do, shucked raw. And then we've got our oysters, which are Thimble Island salts. It's like a splash of ocean when you eat it. Here's the picture of the farm from the surface. I run eco tours, $500 to come out. It's the biggest ripoff in the tourist industry because there's nothing to see. But that's such a good thing, right? It has a low aesthetic impact. Right? Our oceans are these beautiful, pristine places, and we want to keep them that way. Our farms have small footprints. My farm used to be 100 acres. It's down to 20 acres, and I'm growing way more food than before because we're vertical. And anybody can boat, swim, and fish on our farms. They're community spaces where you can dive through our kelp forest. And we don't own the property. All we own is the right to grow shellfish and seaweeds. We own a process, not a property right. We're going to farm to protect our commons rather than privatize it like agriculture did. So our goal was to take on 3 major challenges. One was develop a delicious new seafood plate in this era of overfishing and food insecurity. And we reject aquaculture's obsession with monoculture. We grow for polyculture, a sea basket approach, 2 kinds of seaweeds, 4 kinds of shellfish, and we harvest salt as well. But we've barely broken the surface. There are 10,000 edible plants in the ocean, a couple hundred shellfish. I mean, imagine being a chef at this time and finding out there are arugulas, tomatoes, rices that you've never cooked with before, tasted, or seen. I mean, this is an exciting time to develop a culinary cuisine, and what we're going to do is reimagine the seafood plate, move bivalves and sea greens to the center, and wild fish to the edges. So our kelp is really the gateway drug to desushify sea greens. We're making kelp the new kale by doing barbecue kelp noodles with parsnips and breadcrumbs. These are vegetables. This isn't seafood. We're doing sea green butters, umami bomb, bouillon cubes. Our new ocean dinner, it's going to be fun, it's going to be creative, and it's going to be delicious. And it's time to eat like fish, because fish don't make omega-3s and all these things we need. They eat them. So by eating like fish, we get the benefits while reducing pressure on fish stocks. This isn't some little boutique, like bearded Brooklyn bee farm. We can grow huge amounts of crops in small areas, 10 to 30 tons of seaweed, 250,000 shellfish per acre. If you were to take a network of our farms totaling the size of Washington State, you could feed the world. And this is zero input food. It requires no fresh water, no fertilizer, no feed, no land, making it hands down the most sustainable form of food production on the planet. And in the era of climate change, as water prices go up, feed, fertilizer prices go up, our food is going to be the most affordable food on the planet to grow and the most affordable food on the planet to eat. Right? We are going to be eating sea greens. Climate change is going to force us to eat zero-input foods. The question is it going to be delicious, or is it going to be like being force-fed cod liver oil? And that's where the chefs come in. I mean, I grow disgusting stuff. I'd never eat seaweed, right? But if chefs can't make what we can grow delicious, they should quit their jobs. Developing this climate cuisine is what they're here on Earth to do. The second goal of the farm is to transform fishers into restorative ocean farmers. Because Mother Nature created these 2 technologies millions of years ago designed to mitigate our harm, shellfish and seaweeds. Oysters are these incredible agents of sustainability that filter out 50 gallons of water a day, pulling nitrogen out of our water column, which is the root cause of dead zones spreading through the globe. Our kelp soaks up 5 times more carbon than land-based plants. It's called the sequoia of the sea. We can turn it into zero-input biofuel, 2,000 gallons per acre of ethanol. If you take an area the size of Maine, you could replace all the oil in the United States, according to the Department of Energy. The New Yorker recently called it the culinary equivalent of the electric car. Writers still have their use. So our farms also function as storm surge protectors. Now that our coral reefs, our oyster reefs are gone, our farms replace them. And they're artificial reefs, attracting over 150 species that come hide and thrive. My farm used to be a barren patch of ocean, and now it's a thriving ecosystem. So as fishermen, we're now climate farmers, right? Restoring rather than depleting, and really trying to tackle, in our own small way, the climate crisis we all face. We're also trying to use our zero-input crops to replace land-based inputs. So we've got a program with the Yale Sustainable Food Program to use our kelp as fertilizer in their organic farm. And as the nitrogen leaches off back into the waters, we capture it and close that nitrogen loop. Cattle feed. Cattle have been eating kelp for hundreds of years until industrial feed pushed it off the farm. And if you feed cattle a majority diet of kelp, you get up to a 90% reduction in methane. And you get this beautiful tasting, umami-filled beef, right? It's delicious stuff. When we bring this stuff into New York, I'm going to blow grass-fed beef off the table. And the idea is really to build a bridge between land and sea. Too often our thinking about the food system stops at the water's edge. I go to food conferences, there's like 1,000 people, and there's this little break-off session about the ocean, and 8 people attend. That's why I'm absolutely frightened here. So the last piece is building the foundation of a new economy that puts jobs, justice, and restoration at the center of the plate. Now, I'm not an environmentalist, right? I kill things for a living. You give me a gun, I'll shoot moose out of my kitchen window. I grew up with seal hunts, and I wouldn't be doing this unless it created jobs for the 40% of people that are unemployed in my community, unless it created opportunity for the millions of people that were left behind as we built the polluting industrial economy. That's why I'm here. So we built GreenWave, which is a hybrid a nonprofit for-profit, to begin building this industry from the bottom up. So we work to replicate and scale, we build the infrastructure necessary, and we develop new markets. Now, first thing we did was open source our model. We don't franchise. That's a tool of the old economy. The new economy, we make things accessible to everybody. So anybody with 20 acres and a boat and $30,000 can start their farm and be up and growing the first year. The key to replication is designing around simplicity, not complexity. Our farms require minimal capital costs, minimal skill requirements. Think of it as the nail salon model of the sea. And they're profitable because we don't have to feed and weed these things. We're able to net up to $200,000, $300,000 per farm and employ up to 10 people. And that's just on the farm. That doesn't count the processing centers. So our farmer training program, that's Dave Blaney, 11th generation fisherman. Boats are beached. Now he's growing kelp. He just brought some kelp noodles to the Fishermen's Association, and I hope he didn't get beat up. And what you get as a farmer, you get some startup grants, you get free seed. Now, we give free seed, and we're keeping the hatchery under the nonprofit side because 3 companies own 53% of the land-based seed supply, and seed is the most expensive input for farmers. Right? We're going to look at our system and decide where can profits be extracted and where can't they, where they're not going to come off the backs of the new ocean farmers. We get gear from Patagonia. And we guarantee purchasing, right? It's hard to farm in the era of climate change and globalization. We guarantee to buy up to 80% of our farmers' crops for 3 to 5 years at triple the market rate. We're gonna give people a stable platform so they can learn to grow. And we have requests flooding in. We've had requests to start farms in every coastal state in North America and 40 countries around the world. We have land-based farmers, young ones, are just flooding in because they can't afford land. I've got a new guy, Nick, who was farming for 8 years on someone else's property, came to us. It's $25 an acre to lease per year to lease ocean grounds. We also have our first farmer here in California, who's a Mexican-American, second-generation plumber, and I'm really hoping it's going to be the new face on the West Coast here, so I never have to fly here again. So we're also building the land-based infrastructure to scale. Right, we have the largest hatchery network in the U.S., and we're building seafood hubs so farmers can capture more of that value chain. And our land-based infrastructure, it's designed to be an engine of food justice, a place where we embed good jobs, food access into the DNA of the new ocean economy. In practice, this means placing our seafood hubs in communities that need it most. Our first one was one in the poorest neighborhoods on the East Coast. Our starting wages are minimum $15 an hour, and it's open employment. So don't you dare bring your resume. I don't care if you're a former felon or undocumented worker. We're going to figure out a way to work together. But this isn't just about jobs. This isn't about working in our processing factories. This is about agency. One of the major deficits in our society today is the feeling that you can make a difference, that you have to be an Amazon, you have to be a Google in order to tackle the big problems. You don't. So our goal is to make sure the folks left behind from the old economy own their own farms, that they don't have bosses, that they have self-directed lives. Giving people agency over their lives is a core value of this new ocean economy. The last piece of the GreenWave GreenWave program is innovation and market development. So we're developing new technologies for solar harvesting boats, mobile hatcheries, data sensors, so we can do pollution farming in places like the Bronx and measure our ecosystem services, use it not for the food system, but for the possibly biofuels. Because kelp is the soy of the sea, except for it's not evil. The market power is that it has so many uses in so many sectors. So if you put this together, everybody asks me, what does scale look like? And it's not 1,000-acre banana plantations. It's networks of 25 to 50 farms in a local region, a seafood hub, a hatchery on land, a ring of big institutional buyers, hospitals, colleges, companies like Google, and then a ring of entrepreneurs developing value-added products and doing the innovation. Then we take those GreenWave reefs and we replicate them every 200 miles. You see a Home Depot, we're going to have a GreenWave reef right on top of it. Offshore, we want to embed our farms in wind farms. Why just harvest wind? We have that structure. Let's do food, fuel, fertilizer in those same spaces. Our oceans are huge places. There's a lot of room to play as long as we do it the right way. So, just to close, turning GreenWave's vision into reality, I think, is a necessity. The land-based ag system's just entering these cycles of escalating crisis. Climate change is expected to drive up corn prices up to 140% in the next 15 years. It is terrifying, the carbon and methane output from the ag sector. You throw in population rise, growing inequality in the U.S. and around the globe, and food insecurities emerging as the new normal. And if that's not enough, farmers can't even make a living. 91% of farmers in the U.S. lose money year after year. This is just a system that's not working. So climate change is going to force us into the ocean. I think that's one of the real lessons of the droughts out here in California, is that we're going to be forced out to sea. But our wild fisheries can't handle it. 85% of wild fish stocks are over-harvested, and we just can't expect our fish to bear that burden. But this is all what's so exciting, right? Climate change, at least out on the water, is breeding hope for us that are out there on our boats. Because this is our chance to do food right, the first time in generations to build an agricultural system from the bottom up. Right? Because our oceans are these blank slates. More of the U.S. is underwater than above. So this is our opportunity to protect rather than privatize our oceans, our seeds, ensure beginning and low-income farmers have access to low-cost property, avoid all the mistakes made in industrial land-based ag and industrial aquaculture, and let's just invent whole new occupations to feed the planet and lift communities out of poverty. And this is the new face of environmentalism. It's not just conservation and stopping pipelines. We have to do that. That is great stuff. But it's also about building alternatives, alternative visions. It's about fighting climate change by creating jobs, giving people meaning and agency. Wouldn't that be a beautiful environmental movement if we were pushing for that? Building an economy of food and work where fishermen like me are proud to write songs about it. We can create something so beautiful, so powerful and restorative out at sea, right? And we can eat together, we can work together, and just figure out how to make a living on a living planet. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.